Recovery podcast is real life stories from everyday people in recovery. From mental health issues, trauma, substance misuse, and behavioural addictions. Please visit the website www.lifeinrecovery.co.uk for links to social media and a range of books written by your podcast host, Ren Coy.
Hello and welcome to the Life in Recovery podcast, episode 59 with me, Ren Coy. I hope you're doing very well out there. Today's episode is with my friend Paul M, who is just recently celebrated 15 years of sobriety, and my knowledge of Paul is that he's got a very solid recovery. He works a 12-step program. He's very well respected around the Midlands area in the UK, and he's got a very strong story. I always enjoy listening to Paul at meetings. His story is very inspiring. He ended up in a room on his own, drinking himself to oblivion at his dad's house. He lost everything from his job to his car to 2 marriages, and now he lives what can only be described as a life beyond his wildest dreams. He's got a great job. He's remarried, and he's got great relationships with his kids. So yeah, it's just a very inspiring story, and I hope you enjoy listening to Paul as much as I enjoyed speaking with him.
You know, I mean, you know me a while now. Journey in recovery has been pretty wonderful in the main. You know, my journey into recovery. It's funny how my perspective of my journey in has changed the longer I've been in. You know, I know. You know, when I first came in, and I used to talk about the 3 stages of my drinking, you know, that I never really drank too much until I got to about 17 and there was no dramas. And then I had a very enjoyable stage of my drinking, which was all going out and partying and clubbing and the raves of the early 90s. And I think you know. And, you know, and then I had the kind of what you just described as problematic middle stage. And then the clear alcoholic stage at the end. But it's only over time that I've thought back and thought, you know what, the bit that I remember as being normal, and I've often articulated it as being normal, was incredibly short. Really, really short. I mean, because I didn't really start drinking until I was 17. Went off to university at 18. And then when I was at university, that's when the heavy drinking started. So it was only a few months before that, you know, a trip to the pub meant 2 or 3 pints. And then even as a child, when I had maybe half a dozen times when I drank, you know, I had the opportunity to have a drink. And, you know, the first one I remember put me in hospital. You know, I was 10. I was at junior school, and I went to my nan and granddad's, and I found the whiskey. And, you know, me and my cousin were at the back playing football, and we kept coming, you know, he had a sip of whiskey. He was like, oh, that's horrible. I had a sip of whiskey, went, that's horrible. I'm going to have some more. I ended up drinking about 3/4 of the bottle, and I passed out and was hospitalised. Woke up the next day. They pumped my stomach and all that kind of stuff. And then there was 3 or 4 of those other occasions where I wasn't hospitalised, but I had the chance to get a sneaky drink, and I ended up getting drunk, you know, as a child. So the more I reflect on it, I think it was never really normal. And even the parts that, you know, in the enjoyable years, I have, you know, come to realise that it only appeared normal because of the people I was drinking with, because they drank, you know, the same way. I mean, a lot of that was student life, early 20s, when I came home. All my mates who worked on the building, they all drank hard. So my drinking didn't stick out. You know, it only started to kind of stick out a bit was, you know, as you got towards my late 20s, when everyone started to calm down a little bit. I mean, I kept going out Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, but then I started to drink during the week a bit, and you know, so it became more continuous. And even then, now, you know, I reflect back, and it never never occurred to me at the time. I was walking the dog the other day, and I can remember going on a stag do, and we were in Southport, I think. Yeah, it was Southport. And on the Sunday, when you've had 2 solid days of drinking, everyone gets up. We go to the pub, and everyone's like, "Oh, a quick pint before we leave." Some people are like, "Oh, I don't fancy one," and why would you not do that? Inside, I desperately wanted that feeling that I got when we were out partying, drinking, where it was just a completely new, different world, a complete escape. I wasn't working. I wasn't worried about my work. I wasn't worried about anything. I was just transformed. It just took me into a different world, which was just the best world. It's just the best place to be. So when someone's going, "Oh, I don't fancy today," I'd be like, "Why would you not? Why would you not?" And then
What
feeling quite.
what do you think was behind that? Like, what kind of baggage had you brought into that drinking world? Because I mean, my kind of like interpretation of it is that there's like that gaping hole inside of us, for a reason usually. So what was it that had led to that for you?
Well, I think I'm naturally have realised now that I'm quite introverted, quite shy, and the kind of low self-esteem that I've come to realise was there. Deep down, I want to be on the table with everybody chanting my name, everybody thinking it's brilliant, but I haven't got the balls to do it. And when I've had a drink, I've got the balls to get up and do it. And even without a drink, I think, yeah, it does sound good. It does sound good to be the bloke at the front doing all of this and have everyone chanting, And it just allowed me to be in that world. But I also, so it took away the fear. It gave me confidence. And I think I also worked quite relentlessly. I studied hard. And in those early 20s as well, I'd come back from university and I was doing professional qualifications as well as working full time. And it was just relentless. So I just had this huge escape, from because I was doing finance, I was doing accountancy, which turned out I hated it. But it took me out of that, you've got to be professional, you've got to look right, you've got to say the right things. And I worked at a very old company that was very old fashioned. And it just put me in the world where I felt myself, drinking with my mates. And it was just wonderful. So it never felt like there's that, I'm missing something in life. It just felt like, well, that's work. And then this is just the fun bit. And I just absolutely adored it. So it didn't feel like it would ever become a problem.
You mentioned low self-esteem as well. What was behind that?
Well, it's bizarre. I think I've been in AA probably a good 10 years when somebody was in a meeting and they said low self-esteem. And I went, that's it. As if it was the first time I'd heard it, and that was really odd. It was like the first time I'd heard it. I mean, you can imagine how many times I'd heard it in meetings over that amount of time. And the penny just dropped because I think I went through this kind of, I came to AA and I heard a lot about fear. And it's fear. And I kind of, as you often do, it's that. It's fear. And the more a kind of time went on, I thought it didn't feel like fear. It just felt like, it gave me that confidence that says, yeah, you can do this, you can dance, you can talk to people, people do like you. So that's when it kind of dawned on me. They go, well, why would I have thought I can't? Why would I thought I can't talk to people? And then you may have heard me say in the past that it kind of dawned on me that for many years, when I met people, my instinct was that they didn't like me. My default setting was, I meet people and for some reason I'm rubbing them up the wrong way. They think I'm aggressive. They think I sound stupid. They don't like me. And that's what I thought, and one of the things I've learned is that most people that they may be judging you, but half the time they're more worried about themselves and, what's going on in their own life and their own insecurities. While we're all worried about our own insecurities, not really worried so much about what's going on around us. So this was all false. And I think, it's easy to look back on a few experiences as a child, which I did, and I remember them. I'm only small, and I remember putting my hand up to volunteer to help push a teacher's car when I was in junior school, and the teacher at the front went round and he pointed to all the lads who were going to help, and he went, Mark, Dennis, and he looked at me and he went, you, and laughed. And I remember it. It was about that time when I drank the whiskey. Actually, I think it was in the same year. But I remember feeling this small, and I'm not saying that caused me to go on and drink. It didn't. But my feelings of I'm small, I'm not strong enough, they all, they were just coming from different areas, and it was kind of, I've just come to accept the fact that it's kind of in my DNA, and that's how I felt, and it's still a kind of natural. It's still my natural setting, if I don't work on it, it's still there.
Well, it's like when you find something that basically helps you to either mask your emotions or switch off your emotions, or even allow you to feel your emotions but not kind of like come out sideways, then obviously that thing's gonna work for you for quite some time, isn't it, really, until it stops working.
Yeah, absolutely. And and those wonderful moments that alcohol did give me, those, and there were a lot of nights out, a lot of good times. And the things that I always associated was, things I really enjoyed in my life. I love Christmas. I love going on foreign holidays where the weather's warm. I like a party. And it's only, again, relatively recently, I could think back and go, I've got 3 very distinct memories of being young in my, between 16 years old and 18 years old, of being on Christmas Day, having eaten a big meal and drank a couple of glasses of wine. The wonderful glow that you have when that happens. And I can remember being on holiday on an airbed in the pool, having had probably 2 San Miguel on a lovely sunny afternoon in Tenerife, and feeling that wonderful feeling of life's great after 2 drinks and the warmth of the sun. And for years, every Christmas, every holiday, that's the feeling I went for. And particularly the holiday one. I would go on holiday and I could remember that feeling. So no matter how ill I felt when I was waking up and it's 90 degrees outside and I feel terrible, but in my head I'm going, yeah, but I know I can lie in the sun having had a couple of beers and it'll feel wonderful. So I'd go out and I'd do it again.
Yeah.
I'd go and drink, as soon as I was out there to chase.
Yeah.
And I'd chase that in the day. And then, I could remember, sitting in the sunset in a bar on holiday, wonderful feeling as having had a couple of drinks. So when it got to sunset, I'd go and do it. And then I didn't want to miss any of the nights. So I'd go and get changed. Then I'd be out at 8 o'clock. So then I'd be out till 4 I'd do it again. And every day, chasing that bit of the holiday that I remember being fantastic when I was 17, 18 years. Right to my recall. You what, sorry?
Euphoric recall.
yeah. And a complete fear that if I missed any of those events on any one day, I would miss that magical moment of just, ooh, isn't life wonderful?
Yeah. Well, that is supposed to be the desired effect of alcohol, isn't it? It's supposed to relax you a little bit, give you a little bit of a buzz, and that's it really. And then sedate you a little bit, and that's supposed to be the nice effects of it. But unfortunately, we just take that to the absolute extreme.
Yeah. Well, I always I've likened it to that. Imagine being on an icy slope, and at some point you want to stop. But at that point, that's where you need to stop. But you're on an icy slope and you've got slippy shoes. It's not going to happen no matter what you do. You're just going to overshoot the mark every time. And every time I hit the sweet spot every time and knew when I was there and never could go, okay, stay in the sweet. It always went straight through it.
Sounds like me when I was skiing in Bulgaria at the beginning of the year. I knew where I wanted to be, and I kept falling over.
Yeah. Well, I've been there a few times myself. But that's what it was. In fact, on one of those holidays, one of my mates, said we were there as two couples, and he said to me, I mean, this was early 20s, and he said to me, your problem is at no point during the night do you ever think to have a break. Do you ever think, right, let's just have a glass of Coke, have a water? And he said to me that night, I remember him doing it, we were at the bar. He said, this is when you should have a pint of water. He said, don't have a drink now, just have a Coke or something. And I just couldn't do it. I can remember vividly now buying the pint of lager, and he was just like,
yeah, get out the way, you idiot.
Yeah, it's just it's going to be just as bad again, and it was. And every holiday I'd lose 2 or 3 days, just in the room. Couldn't, but then I'd still, it's fantastic, and I can't wait to go again, and I'd live the same nightmare again. So and so a lot of what I'm describing was actually in the years that I would consider okay.
The fun years.
yeah, exactly. This was with my first wife.
Yeah.
This was before my first wife left me, before my second wife. That period when I was with my second wife, that's when I go, well, yeah, it became a problem. And, I became what I could recognize as alcoholic, from how alcoholism was described to me when I came to AA. But it's only in retrospect, as, experiences come, I can look back and go, yeah, this problem was here way back.
Yeah, well, it's certainly, and without question, progressive, isn't it? And that I think every single one of us that comes into recovery and looks back in our life can see that right from the word go, pretty much it was an issue, And I was the same. I mean, if I hadn't have found drugs, like fortunately or unfortunately, however you want to view it, but fortunately, I started taking a lot of class A's, pills and cocaine and stuff like that, and I didn't realise it at the time, but it stopped me having blackouts for a quite a long period, because the cocaine enabled me to drink more. The pills, I wouldn't drink as much when I was taking ecstasy, so therefore I wasn't getting into blackout. But right at the very beginning, like when I was 16, 17 and I started drinking heavily then, I mean, the blackouts were happening straight away. So, knowing what I know now about recovery, if I hadn't have got into drugs for a good 5 or 6 years, maybe longer, I probably would have ended up in who knows where, prison, hospital, or dead. As those are the three options, aren't they? Really?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my experience, on the drug scene, were in the early 90s, when I got into the all night rave scene came along, and that to me was, this is all new. This is fantastic. This is again, euphoria, escape. No hangover. And of course, at first, a lot of the raves, they didn't sell alcohol. So it was kind of, for a budding alcoholic, it was a relative, mind you, only an alcoholic would say a drug-fueled experience was safe. It felt relatively safe. But where I can look back and say the power of alcohol, when they started to sell in some of the, I used to go to a regular one in Wolverhampton called Quest, and they opened the bar, so now you could drink in there as well. So I'd mix, I was drinking speed, the ecstasy, and I was getting the effects of all three. And the worst one was having the desire to speak to everyone from the speed and the ecstasy, and the stupidity of what was coming out because of the alcohol.
Yeah.
But the alcohol overpowered. Eventually it was just like, the alcohol came first again, and the rave scene kind of drifted away. I with the drugs, it was kind of like ecstasy tablets. I'd be cautious about. I'll take half, and then I'll take the other half, and sometimes I'd take two. I mean, and there was people shoveling them down the neck, so I'd be quite cautious with it, which is I just look back and reflect on, as a very different way that I drank.
Yeah.
Clearly the alcohol had a hold of me, whereas my mind would go, look, when you're taking this stuff, you want to keep your wits about you. You want to know what's going on. I never ever thought that once as regards drinking, but the thought process was there as regards taking, drugs, which is a bit odd. It just tells you that was the obsession part of the illness with the drink. It just got me, and it was just, my mind did not think logically when it came to alcohol.
Yeah. And were you doing all the classics like drink driving and getting into scrapes and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I lost my license for drink driving the day after. I got pulled over for speeding actually, and then you could smell the alcohol in my breath. The breathalyzed me. I was well over the limit. But there was times when I wasn't caught, and this would have been, this time when I had my pub, but we had a house which was a couple of mile away. So my wife would be at the house, and I'd cash up, but I'd always have a drink and I'd have quite a lot of drinks. I'm not driving far. I'm not driving far. And, I think one occasion I pulled right out in front of a lorry. How we did, got out of the way just in time. But all of the, tons of fights. We were fighting all the time when we were out clubbing in Wolverhampton, that kind of, part of the course. But I think it was just the fact that, two managers went down the pan. And, the first one it's just gone. And it was kind of like, I remember the day she left me, and my dad said, "You need to go round, sort this out." And my mum was going, "You can go to the pub today. You go to the pub today. You no one to answer to." Remember, it was a Sunday. I got no one to answer to today. I'll just go around the pub, and which didn't really. It wasn't an indication of how I felt towards her. It was an indication of how I felt towards the drink.
Yeah.
I would.
It comes first.
Absolutely, and I also regretted that, and over the coming months, desperately wished on that day I'd gone and at least tried to sort it. I think the fact that I didn't kind of sent a message to her, and in retrospect now, I realised what was going on, but it was just too strong. That was always going to come, and it did all the way through the years. It came first. And partly, I know part of that was just the selfishness of my decisions, because part of it was my desires come first, and partly there would be times when it was just the compulsion was there, and I couldn't not have the next drink. There were times when I can remember, my wife we were going on a works Christmas do, and I'd never met any of them, and it was on a Saturday after a home match. So I'm going out drinking, and she said, "Okay, but please don't drink too much, and I'll pick you up straight after the match." I said, "No, pick me up at normal time, and we'll be straight there. I'll be okay." We left after the starters, put it that way, from my behaviour, because I was just there was no moderation of my drinking that day, none. At no point, I'm going out for a works meal with her boss, people they've never met. They're all going to be with their partners. Even going after a few drinks would be risky, but I was blind drunk when I went. There's not even a thought, because just the compulsion was. It was just there was no chance of me stopping. And again, these were, that kind of fell into the time when I say, it was a bit problematic. Clearly alcoholic now from what I know. But in my mind, when I always think of the final third of my drinking, it was when I moved house to live somewhere where I no longer, I didn't have to get into work on a Monday. I could work from home. So all of a sudden, this relative discipline of trying to sweat out a lot of the alcohol on a Sunday and trying to at least have a semblance of a reasonable appearance to be able to go to work on a Monday, that just went. So I could just drink on a Sunday as much as I want. And of course, then I work from home on a Monday. And I felt terrible. So I would drink to get myself through the day. And then on Tuesday, I'd be going out on the road. So I'd then start to have some sneaky drinks during the day just to, again, get myself through the day. And it was all, as it was just medicinal. It was always just to get myself through. And I think one of the oddest things about that whole period was there was never a thought of alcoholism, never a thought of I have a fundamental problem with drinking. I just thought I was in this rut. I just thought I was in a rut that I don't seem to be able to get out of. And if I have a clear run, alcohol free, then I'll be fine. But I never put the slightest bit of effort into having a clear run. You'll have heard of people, you'll have read of people. I decided it was getting tough, so I got 3 months without alcohol. I never even thought. Literally, the idea never came into my head to do that. It was just day after day after day, which was just weeks and months, and then it was a few years. I'd say that part of my drinking was probably 6 or 7 years, of just this constant day to day, just this hamster wheel where having a drink was always on my mind. The next drink was never far away, till I had completely, and I do remember this. I remember thinking to myself, I cannot remember going to bed sober. Cannot remember how far away, how long ago it was, but it hasn't been for years. And I remember that. But still, the mind didn't go, you need to stop, because it was only when my job and career was kind of really was coming to an end, and I was in the process of losing my job, and I used the money that I got from that to buy a pub, of all things. And that was the final push that said, my progression in alcoholism is no longer going to be slow and progressive. It's going to be incredibly quick and progressive, because all of a sudden, all the control was gone. I didn't have a job to answer to. I was in my own pub. I worked for myself. And the denial was so great that, as bad as I was, I didn't think people could really see it. And in that, from the May, and I came into into AA in the July. So May, June, July, 3 months, hospitalised, about six. I was literally in for a week, out for a week, in for a week, out for a week, because the control completely went. It just went off a cliff, and there's kind of hammering home this, but I still never thought to go to AA. I still never thought I should do something about it. It was only when on a Sunday, and my dad came into the bedroom, and I hadn't got out of bed for about 3 days. The pub was still running. My ex-wife was down there running the pub. I hadn't got out of bed for 3 days after yet another hospitalisation. And, he said to me, there's an AA meeting tonight in Rugeley, will you go? And I just said, yeah. It was just that moment. If he'd have asked me a day before, I might have said no, because I felt too rough. If he'd asked me a day later, I might have felt a bit better, because I'm all right. Just at that moment, then I went. So, yeah. I was in such a bad physical state that my dad actually took me to the meeting.
Okay.
He took me there, and yeah. So, but look, the point is, even when it got to that, as bad as it was, it's even a flicker of you need to do something about this hadn't come into my mind. It was actually offered to me, and I said yes. Thankfully.
And how did you feel? Well, not just after your first meeting, but how did you feel during your first meeting?
Amazingly, physically awful, but amazingly hopeful, because for the very first time, all the things that I'd been doing, hiding the drinks, no longer feeling hungover, but just feeling incredibly ill for days and days and days. People were talking about how they felt and what they did and when they drank and what they drank and what it did to them. And I was just going, yeah, that's what I do. And I literally, I felt like I was the only person in the world who was drinking the way I drank and who felt the way I felt. And I couldn't understand why I felt the way I felt. And obviously I was listening to the meeting, think, well, I've obviously had withdrawal symptoms. I've had the DTs. That's why I've seen things and I've heard things and I've talked mumbo jumbo, words that I couldn't even recognise. And I was hearing it all in the first meeting. And of course they told me what the illness was. And that was the main thing I took from it. They told me what alcoholism was. I was like, that's what I've got. They said to me at the end of the meeting, Paul, do you want to say anything? I said, yeah, my name's Paul. I'm an alcoholic. There's no... The bizarre thing is that in my mind, there's no doubt at that first meeting. The problem was I came away from it, and then I was going to meetings. I started to feel well, and my head started to ruminate on it's the first drink. And my head was still going back to this, no, it's your hangover. It's the hangover that's the problem. You can't get out of the hangover. And I think I was in my pub watching, and I was still working in the pub, watching people every day have 2 pints, read the paper and go. So I kept trying to do that. And what was so dangerous about it is I could, on any one given day, I could do that. But as you know, that would just sow the seed to say you're not ill. So the next day I'd do it again and have an extra couple of drinks. And it would just day by day escalate So then I was waking up feeling a bit shaky because I'd had a bit too many when I cashed up the night before. I'll go and do some cellar work and I'll have a couple of drinks and have a couple of vodkas, and I'm right as rain for lunchtime. Get through lunchtime and have a couple of drinks, then all of a sudden I'm off, and that was, that was pretty much the story for just over a year, and I think it was into the end of September, so a year and 2 months actually. No, a year and 2 months that it took me to put the drink down. Just kept. I was absolutely convinced that it wasn't the first drink; it was a hangover. But, I think what it was, I was, the day that I truly took step one, I lay there and thought, you're powerless before the first drink, not after. Yes, you're powerless after it, but the killer part of the illness is you're powerless before it unless you're doing something about it. And it's got dawned on me, that's the purpose of the program, because you're powerless before it. And if I don't work the steps, then this compulsion to drink isn't going to go away, and it's going to keep getting me, and I'm going to die. For the first time, I was thinking, well, I don't want that. I remember lying in bed going, I will not drink today. But whatever happens, I just will not drink today. And that was the kind of start of I think the real start of my recovery.
So what was the journey like then of recovery? Because you've just celebrated 17 years, haven't you?
15. Just 15.
Sorry,
yeah.
15
yeah.
years.
No. It's
congratulations.
Yes. Well, it was really emotional to get to 15 years. I had this. It was quite strange actually, because for 10 years, I never thought I'd get to one. I never thought I'd get to one, and I felt unbelievable when I got to 1 year, and I've always feel really, really emotional on my birthdays. And when I got to 15, it felt actually, when I got to 10 years, I thought I'm going to stop thinking of myself as a newcomer. And I actually think it was a good habit. I always felt myself as a newcomer until I got to 10 years, and I thought, okay, you've been around now. It's no need to think that you are a newcomer. And 15 years just felt quite special. And the journey, it's been wonderful. It was. It's sound like a cliche, but it has been the roller coaster because, for the first 3 years, my second wife had left. I used to have to try. I had to leave to go and get a job. I moved away. I didn't know anyone. I had no friends down in Bristol, but there's a remarkable fellowship down there. Some fantastic people, great meetings. So I literally worked. I went to the gym, and I went to AA. And then at weekends, I'd come up to the Midlands, get Beth, my daughter, and drive back down. That's all I did. It was such a routine, but all of those things were good for me, And I think because I got a sponsor down there that was like, you do the steps the way I tell you. And I was like, okay, fair enough. And we did. We really frog marched through them. I started to feel good. I started to feel this is all right actually. This is not the way I would have chosen my life to be. So, despite the fact I'd been heartbroken by, the second marriage breakup, and because my daughter was so young, she was only 3. So it was really, she's so cute, 3 years, a little piglet, and all that kind of stuff. It broke my heart to be apart from her. But, I used to go and get her all the time and spent loads of time with my daughter. And it was great. If I could go back, and you shouldn't really do this, but I regret the fact that I was a little bit, at the time, I was like, I wish my wife hadn't left. I wish the 3 of us were together. I wish the 3 of us were doing this. The world seems to be full of families that haven't split up, and there's only me going through this. And of course, that's not the case. It was just my distorted reality. So, and after 3 years, I met the lady who's now my third and final wife. And that sits in the record books. There's a full stop after it. And I ain't doing that again. And it's been great. We've been together 12 years. So that's been really rewarding. I've been with the same company. I joined the company I work for 4 months into sobriety. I'm still with them, and it's gone well. From a career perspective, but also, I know I'm working from home at the moment. I'm really proud of the fact to go, I've worked for them for 15 years. I've not had a day off sick. For an alcoholic who, if I did a full week when I turned up for work every day, I was like, this is good going, So to go 15 years, and I think the point is, if this is an illness of low self-esteem, all of these things just help you feel better about yourself. They rebuild that self-esteem. I still have doubts about the physicality side of things, and the smart, my physical size and strength and all that kind of stuff. And and I kind of accept the fact that that's not going to kill me. Just realize that it's there. It's not real, but it's just what your head tells you. But all the other things about who I am as a person, that's all kind of come together a lot more, because the track record tells me I can do the right things. I don't need to lose a marriage. Clearly she loves me. I don't need to ask her every day, does she love me? I still do, because that's just part of my makeup. But, I know deep down that she does. And, by doing the right thing by her, by myself, by my daughter, by work, by people I know in AA and sponsees, then, you can look at yourself in the mirror at night, can't you, and go, you're all right, actually. You don't need to change. No need to have a drink to change the way I feel. I think one of the biggest parts of the journey is, truly remembering to take it a day at a time. As we were chatting earlier, it's coronavirus. There are good things that come out of it, and I think for me as an alcoholic, it says, a day at a time isn't about early recovery when you're trying to get through a day, without a drink a day at a time. It truly is about, you have to do a certain degree of planning in your life, but for God's sake, you can only deal with what's on your plate today, because there's times during this lockdown that my head has gone forward literally 15 years. It's gone, your pension, the shares that we're going to pay off your house, it's all gone, it's all disaster. Christ, you're going to be destitute in 15 years. It's like, just the sentence, you're going to be destitute in 15 years. Well, okay, fair enough. You might not even live that long. So just, keep it in the day, because all this might be over next year and everything's back to normal. And, I'll look back and go, you just cause yourself too much grief. So I think that's, one of the big lessons that I've got from that. I mean, I think the other thing I'd say, one of my most precious parts of recovery has been the sponsorship side, sponsoring people. It's always nice, of course, and it sounds a bit twee to say it's nice to help people, but when you've sat on the settee in your own house opposite a friend, a fellow sufferer who's in tears and describing where they're at with their life, and to be able to go, mate, I've been exactly where you are, not similar, exactly where you are. I did all of those things, and this is what can happen, and this is, and to be able to talk it through and to actually see that recognition in their face that says, okay, yeah, I feel better, and that's priceless. That's absolutely priceless to be able, because I didn't read it, I didn't watch a video on it, I didn't watch a self-help video that says, if you talk to someone this way, you can help them. It was just going, mate, I've been there. I've actually been exactly where you are. And I've done that with the sponsees. And there's been times, you sit in meetings when people are breaking their heart, you've been able to go, been exactly where, been there. We've all been to our first meetings for sure. But, partners leaving us, career gone, drink driving, all that. Yeah.
What does life in recovery mean to you then? Well,
I mean, it's your life back. My original, Billy Mack, who a lot of people know, he always used to say to me, this gives you a life befitting a human being. And I think it's a great saying, because when you look at, the way I was living, it wasn't befitting a human being, because all the things that make life worthwhile, companionship and friendships and doing the right thing, I didn't have any of it. At the end, I didn't have any of it. If it wasn't for my dad, I would have ended up on the streets, because, with no job, no career, no nothing, everything had gone. He just came around and took me back in the house and, kept me under lock and key actually for a while. So, I do like to think that, you become the person you were always meant to be. And I genuinely mean that. And I mean it because I look back at myself as a youth, and I love sport. I'd always have a go at anything. I always worked hard. Any sport. I've never really excelled at any sport, but I've always been able to do it. Do you know what I mean? if you get a windsurf, I'll probably be able to do it. I'm never going to be the British champion, but at least I can do it.
Yeah.
I've never excelled at anything. I was a substitute at football. I could play football, but I'm not great. And now, having not done anything, literally I still played football into my early 20s, but then from early 20s to early 30s, I just did no sport. I watched it. I went to the football because you get drunk. It was a day out. I didn't play anything. And now, I've got a full life. There's, I talked about work, I talked about family, but, I'm a keen mountain biker, scuba diver. I've been skiing holidays. I'm fortunate enough to be able to do that. And, these are just wonderful things. I like to train, keep myself fit, lift weights. I realise part of that is that, because I feel, and I realise that's a compensation thing, and that's fine. But, it's that, I think if you'd have met me when I was 15, and you said, well, what will you be like when you're 51? You'd probably go, oh, yeah, that makes sense. And then I'd like to say, do you want to see what happened in the middle? This was not a straight line.
No, there was a few zigzags.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what would you say, like, to anybody at home that's listening that might be struggling or might be thinking about, giving AA or even NA a try? What would you say?
Oh, it's the best thing I've ever done. We're absolutely 100%. Without a doubt. And number one, that's if you're considering it. And if you are struggling, I was 100% certain in that first year that I was going to be someone who couldn't get it. I just thought, I just can't get this. And people would say that a year in, and I said, I just can't do it. I just can't do it. It just seems to go wrong. When my head tells me to drink, I can't help but drink. And there's no way for me to not do it. I literally thought it was in my DNA. And it was only when, I truly decided, right, I'm going to do something about it every single day, and I'm going to work the steps. I'm going to actually really put the effort in that I got better. It wasn't. So number one, it works for everybody. That's been my experience. If you come to AA, go to the meetings or NA, you get a sponsor, you do the steps, do the suggested things, you get better. That's been my experience. I've not met anyone who said, I've done all of that to the best of my ability and it didn't work. I haven't met that. I have met a load of people where it hasn't worked. And so, well, what happened? They said, well, I went to one meeting a week. Did you do the steps? No, I didn't do the steps. Did you get a sponsor? No, I didn't get a sponsor. It's kind of like, well, okay, those are the things that you need to do to get yourself well. And that's been my experience. For me, just going to meetings, that doesn't work for me. And I'm certainly not on the marketing committee for AA. It's if however you can get sober, fine. But for me, AA is the steps, sponsorship, meetings. The steps came first. We know, you go back and read the history, that the steps came first and the meetings were out of a necessity to spread the message of the steps. So, therefore, the steps are the critical part. That's why the book was written. The book was written to communicate the steps. And the book needed a name, so it's called Alcoholics Anonymous, and the core of it is the steps. And, so it is. And now, like you mentioned, it's 15 years. And my days, there are certain things in my day that don't change. I wake up every day and I say my prayers, not sure what I hand over to, but I hand over. The day. Whatever's going to happen, it's all right with me. I'll do my bit. But I hand over, I do that several times during the day. I say my prayers at night, and again, don't know what I'm praying to. I read the daily reflections. I try to keep the principles of the steps as close to me as possible. It's a normal house. This is. I fall out with my wife regularly. I get it wrong regularly, but I do my best to put it right. I screw up. I go back and apologise. I say, "Love, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said that. This is what I was trying to say. I'm really sorry." And the situation diffuses, otherwise I'll pick up resentments. And, I talk to my sponsees regularly. We talk during the week. Don't talk to my sponsor as much as I should, but we do talk. But that's the point. It's just about that, I know I'll never stray. I'll never go away from the program and the meetings and the steps, because that's what's kept me alive. and kept me happily alive. I'm not clinging on. I'm not hanging on to life thinking, Jesus, this is painful. I mean, there are painful parts. I drank on everything, and my dad, when my dad passed away last year, and my dad was my hero. He was, everything, so much to me, and it hurt more than I could possibly describe. And anyone who's lost a parent and they're that close to them will know exactly what I mean. But I never drank, and I never even thought of drinking. Never even, to drink to get through that was never a thought that came into my mind, which is just, again, tells you the power of the program.
Brilliant.
And it wasn't because, because some people, I won't drink because I know I'm going to wake up with a hangover and it won't have gone away. It wasn't that. It just never occurred to me as a solution.
Yeah, the idea has just completely gone from your mind now.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the encouraging thing for newcomers. There'll be a day and you won't notice it that day. You'll notice it probably a month later when you go back and go, I haven't thought about drinking. I haven't thought about drinking for a month. God, how weird's that? And and that is a miracle. I mean, it just goes. And for an illness that's, a big part of it is the obsession of the mind, how much you think about it all the time. For all of a sudden to have, gone days or weeks or a month. And I can remember the day I realised it had happened to me. I looked in a pub and it was packed. I thought, that pub's packed. I sort of, I haven't thought about a drink for weeks. And that was when I knew, and that was right back at the beginning of the 15 years. That was when I knew. I thought, it's gone. The compulsion and the obsession has gone. It's a bloody miracle.
Lovely. Well, I think that's where we'll leave it, mate. That was great. Thank you very much.
All right, mate. Well, lovely to talk to you. Thanks for asking.
Too. Brilliant. Thanks very much. Thanks very much for listening, and if you've been affected by any of the issues discussed in the podcast, just look underneath the podcast at a range of links to mutual aid organisations. Please don't forget that you can support the podcast at patreon.com/lifeinrecovery, and if you go to the website www.lifeinrecovery.co.uk, you'll see links to all my social media and all my books. Peace and love, and goodbye for now.